Good evening. At this time, I call to order Planning and Zoning Board, City of Lake City. The date is 12th of November. Will all please rise for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Mayor, would you do the honors?
Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight, thanking and praising you for another day. We thank you for how you watched over us, oh God, all day long, and you kept us safe. We pray, God, that you would bless this meeting, help us, oh God, to do what's right and just in your sight. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You may be seated. Mr. Angelo, roll call of attendees.
Ms. McCollum?
Here.
Ms. Wilson?
Here.
Ms. Douglas?
Here.
Mr. Woolham?
Here.
Ms. Johnson? And Mr. Lighty?
Present. Quorum being assembled, we can continue. Electronically, the meeting minutes from our meeting of October the 8th were distributed through our internal email accounts. I trust all members of the board have had the opportunity to look those over. At this time, are there any recommended additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes as electronically presented? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion for their adoption? Motion approved.
Second.
Woolham, Douglas, by hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right, we have meeting minutes. There being no old business to come before this board at this time, we'll move into new business. Tonight we have before us three matters that will be considered and voted upon by the Planning and Zoning Board in a quasi-judicial manner. Those three items are application CPA 24-04, being a petition submitted by Charles Miller of Altwell LLC as agent for VYP LLC. Owner to amend future land use map by changing the future land use from commercial county to commercial city on property described as parcel 026310000. Secondly, we have application Z 24-05, being a petition submitted by Charles Miller of Altwell LLC as agent for VYP LLC. Owner to amend the official zoning atlas of land development regulations by changing the zoning district from commercial intensive county to commercial intensive city on similar property as described as parcel 026310000. Finally, we'll have application SPR 24-11, being a petition submitted by Carol Chadwick as agent for Isaac Schlimmer for a site plan review for Schlimmer multifamily development within a residential multifamily 1 zoning district and located upon parcel 11695-080. Now ask the city attorney to run through the procedures to be used in these hearings and to inquire of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board regarding any ex parte communications.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The purpose of the following procedure is to ensure an applicant provides a complete presentation of their request to the board prior to any testimony being provided by staff, so the applicant receives a full and fair hearing on their application, and any decision by the board is based on evidence presented. All testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts, and closing arguments will be limited to evidence of record. To accomplish this, the city, the applicant, the Planning and Zoning Board, and other parties will be recognized in the following order. First, the city will provide a brief summary of the application, then the applicant will present its case, followed by the city presenting its full staff report and case. After that, any party interveners can present their case to the board. Following that, we will have public comment, first from individuals, then from representatives of groups of 6 or more. Following this, we'll proceed into cross-examination, first by the applicant, then by party interveners, and then by city staff if they choose to. After all of these responses, if the chairman deems it necessary and appropriate to ensure fairness and due process, he may choose to allow participants to respond to any testimony provided by others during the hearing. After all of this has been received, then at that time, members of the Planning and Zoning Board, through the chairman, may ask questions of any of the individuals who have presented information to the board. Following this, the applicant followed by party interveners, and then city staff can make any final closing comments or arguments related to the evidence of record. I'll then advise the board as to applicable law and factual findings that must be made to recommend to the council approval or denial of the application. And then once advised on the law and findings, the board will conduct its deliberations openly regarding the evidence. And after this, then vote to recommend approval with conditions or denial of the application to the full city council. All persons have the right through the chairman to ask questions of staff or other speakers, to seek clarification of comments made by staff or other speakers, and to respond to comments or presentations made during the hearing. All people presenting written materials to the board for consideration must ensure a copy of these materials is provided to the clerk, that's Mr. Angelo, over here for inclusion in the board's record of proceedings and official minutes. While the board welcomes comments from all persons with an interest in this proceeding, Florida law requires the board's decision and quasi-judicial actions to be supported by competent, substantial evidence presented to the board during the hearing on the application. Competent, substantial evidence is evidence that a reasonable mind would accept as adequate to support a conclusion. There must be a factual basis in the record to support opinion testimony from both expert and non-expert witnesses, and people presenting testimony may support their testimony by relying on factual information provided by city staff, the applicant, or other information included in written materials provided by the applicant or in the city staff report. This time I need to inquire of each member of the board individually if you've received any ex parte communications involving any of these three matters, and if so, to please disclose them. Mr. Willem?
No, sir.
Okay. Ms. Douglas? Ms. McCallum? Okay, and Ms. Wilson?
No.
And Chair Lighting?
No.
Okay, thank you. Now, before we proceed, as to all three of these matters, if there are people here that wish to testify or provide information on any of the three matters, if you could stand now and be sworn in for the hearings. So if you're here to testify either on the information or matter being presented by Mr. Millar of Atwell LLC as agent for BYP LLC, that was the future land use map amendment and the rezoning, or if you're here to speak to the matter being presented by Ms. Chadwick as agent for Isaac Schlemmer for the multifamily development, if you could stand and I'll administer an oath. If you could raise your right hand, please. Do each of you swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you. Just a second. The first matter before the board is proposed resolution number CPA 2024-04, which states a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Lake City, Florida, serving also as the local planning agency of the City of Lake City, Florida, recommending to the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, approval of an amendment to the future land use plan map of the City of Lake City Comprehensive Plan for 50 or less acres of land pursuant to an application submitted by Charles Millar as agent for VYP LLC. That application being CPA 24-04 under the amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3248 Florida statutes as amended, providing for a change to the land use classification from commercial county to commercial city of certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. At this time, Chair Loddick, I turn it back over to you.
Very nice. All right, at this time, can we please have a short summary and overview from the city on this regard?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, this is a follow-up land use action. The subject property was annexed into the city on October 7th of this year. The matter before you would change the land use from county land use to city land use, which is a follow-up to any annexation. You have to change over from city land use and zoning or county land use and zoning, to city land use and zoning. So petition CPA 24-04 will do just that. It'll change future land use from county commercial to City of Lake City commercial. Brief overview.
Nice, thank you. This time we'll hear presentation and testimony from representative for the applicant, Charles Millar of Atwell LLC, acting as agent for VYP LLC. Approach. Name, spelling, and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
Legal name Peter Ranucci, R-A-N-U-C-C-I. Legal address is 13629 Clarence Dobbs Road. Glen St. Mary. 32040.
All right, you may begin your presentation and testimony.
Great. Good evening. Peter Ranucci, Atwell, here on behalf of the applicant VYP LLC, which is also the owner of said property. Thanks for allowing me to present tonight, and thanks for the staff for putting together the presentation and helping us coordinate these items on the agenda. So future land use plan map amendment from commercial county to commercial city. I feel the couple of justifications are it's a consistent zoning and in compliance with the annexation to the city. The Florida statutes require that each parcel have a future land use and a zoning within the municipality. It is consistent with the state and regional comp plan policies and goals. There's also the city utility infrastructure is available within the US 90 corridor. It's also a great location for infill redevelopment, and definitely has great characteristics for commercial development. And obviously with the US 90 ever changing corridor, getting bigger and larger is a great improvement in that area. So that's what I got. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Do you move your application into the record for consideration?
I'm sorry?
Or are you moving your application into the record for
Yes.
consideration? All right, appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, I call back up the representative of the city. It's Mr. Thomas, right?
Yes.
Very nice.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just interrupt just a second. We've been joined by Ms. Johnson, and I need to inquire as to whether she's had any ex parte communications on any of the three matters on the Planning and Zoning Board agenda tonight.
I have not.
You have not, all right, thank you. We just need to establish that for the record.
And Mr. Angelo, please update the roll of attendees to show that at present we have a full house minus our, yeah. All right, floor is yours, presenting city's testimony, case, and evidence.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the application was tendered to the city for review. It was distributed to various different divisions of staff at the city. Basically, there were no objections. Didn't find any liens or code violations, no permitting issues. There were no comments from water, sewer departments. There is a request that they will provide gas, which I guess currently is not being provided. The water distribution and collections department did say that they're going to need an actual set of plans before they can recommend approval, but that will come at the site plan modification application. Customer service, tap application utility plans that need to be submitted as well before they can make their final determination. And Public Works wants to see the stormwater design. Again, that would come at a later date. No response from Fire Department or Police Department. No response from the Florida Department of Transportation. The Water Management District did note that they may require an ERP stormwater permit depending on modifications they intend to make. No comment from the school board, and no issues identified from the county. There's a map to give you a idea of the location of the parcel in question. It's at the corner of the 247 and Highway 90. It's currently, I believe, county commercial intensive, and it's going to go to city commercial intensive, or well, city commercial land use, and then ultimately the zoning would be for commercial intensive as well. Staff does concur with the applicant's agent that it does not violate the comprehensive plan in any way. That is staff's presentation.
All right. And
I'd like
you'll be
to
moving all your material
move
into
the
the record
staff
as well?
report into the record as well, yes.
Thank you. Any additional testimony or case evidence you'd like to present?
No, sir.
All right, you may be seated. Other than those choosing to make public comment, at this time I would call for any official parties intervener to please stand and be recognized that wish to speak and offer testimony or cross-examine witnesses in this matter and make their presence known. Very nice, there being none, we'll move on to public comment. This time, do we have individuals that would individually like to speak either for or against this petition as presented by its proponent? Seeing and hearing none. This time, do we have groups represented by a spokesman representing 6 individuals or more that would like to speak either for or against the petition as presented by the proponent? Seeing and hearing none, at this time, public comment on this matter is considered closed. This time we'll move to the cross-examination phase of this. Will the applicant please rise? At this time, do you have any desire to cross-examine any of the witnesses that have testified thus far in this matter? Very nice. There being no party intervener, representative of the city, would you please stand? At this time, do you wish to cross-examine any witnesses or testimony that has been given in this matter thus far?
No, Mr. Chair.
Very nice, you may be seated. At this time, do we have any questions or clarifications from members of the Planning and Zoning Board towards anyone that has offered testimony, evidence, or a case in this matter?
No, sir.
All right. Hearing and seeing none, at this point, we'll move on to final arguments. Will the applicant please stand? Do you wish to make any final arguments in this matter?
No.
Very nice, you may be seated. There being no party intervener, we move to city staff. City, please rise. Do you have any final arguments you would like to make in this matter?
No, Mr. Chair.
Very nice, you may be seated. Attorney Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The decision of the board should be based only on evidence provided by sworn witnesses. In addition, the board may recommend to the council the adoption of this change to the comp plan if it preserves the internal consistency of the comp plan, complies with applicable state laws, and does not confer special privileges or rights on any person. At this time, the board may discuss the application, testimony, and any findings of fact on which it wishes to base a decision, and vote on the proposed resolution CPA 24-04 following an appropriate motion and second. Should the board wish to recommend approval to the application to the council, it may adopt resolution CPA 2404 as presented upon a motion and second to adopt said resolution as read by title only.
All right, at this time, is there any additional discussion amongst members of the board prior to calling this to closure? Do we have a motion for adoption of the petition and recommendation of moving the resolution as read into the record by Attorney Martin on to City Council?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Woolen?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidy?
Yay. All right, by unanimous action, that will be forwarded on to the council for consideration. Mr. Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, the next matter before you is proposed resolution number Z2405, title of which reads a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Lake City, Florida, serving also as a local planning agency of the City of Lake City, Florida, recommending to the City Council of the City of Lake City, Florida, approval of an amendment to the zoning map of the City of Lake City land development regulations of less than 10 contiguous acres of land pursuant to an application Charles Millar of Atwell LLC as agent for VYP LLC, the owner of said acreage, providing for rezoning from commercial intensive or CI county to commercial intensive or CI city of certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Lake City, Florida, repealing all resolutions in conflict and providing an effective date. I want to remind everyone that previously took an oath that you're still under oath on this matter. And at this time, I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Very nice. Mr. Thomas, please rise and provide us with a short summary and overview of this separate but similar petition, and for the benefit of those who may not be students of planning and zoning, how it differs from what we just considered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Basically, the previous action changed the future land use map for the city of Lake City to bring in this parcel under, as a commercial future land use category. This is the companion resolution that would then take the same parcel and change the zoning from county commercial intensive to city of Lake City commercial intensive. Basically, the presentation for the rezoning is essentially the same as it was for land use in terms of the information about the parcel. So that was the brief overview for this.
All right, very nice. You may be seated. At this time, will the applicant please approach? I remind you, you are still under oath. We'll now hear a presentation from a representative of Atwell LLC for the applicant VYP LLC.
Good evening again. The rezoning from the county commercial to city commercial, as mentioned, was necessary due to the land use change as well. So the same justifications that were mentioned would carry over to this as well. So, thank you.
And you intend to pass along your package for inclusion in the record of this
Yes,
proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Be seated. All right, Ms. Thomas, please reapproach. Remind you, you're still under oath. Would you please present case, evidence, and testimony on behalf of the city and city staff departments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as stated, essentially the information remains the same for this parcel and the intended use. The commercial intensive under county and commercial intensive allowable uses under city are substantially the same, very little difference between the two. And so there would be no substantial change in uses allowed going from county to city in this instance. Really with that, staff completes its presentation and requests that the staff report be read into the record at this time.
Very nice. You may be seated. Other than those wishing to give public comments, either individually as part of a group, do we have any official parties intervener that would like to make their presence known, to give testimony, and to offer case evidence in this matter? If so, please stand and be recognized. Seeing and hearing none, this time we'll move on to public comment. At this time, is there any individual member gathered here this evening that would like to speak either for or against the petition as presented by applicant? Seeing and hearing none, is there any representative of 6 or more individuals that would like to approach and speak either for or against the petition as presented by the applicant? Seeing and hearing none, at this point, we will consider public comment on this matter to be closed. Will the applicant please rise? At this time, do you wish to cross-examine anyone that has offered testimony or case evidence in this matter this evening? Very nice, you may be seated. There being no party intervener, representative of the city, please rise, Mr. Thomas. Same question to you. Very nice, you may be seated. Open it up for the board. Is there any member of the Planning and Zoning Board that would like to question or address anyone that has made public comment or offered testimony or presented evidence in this matter before us this evening? All right, very nice. We'll move to the final argument phase. First, applicant, please rise. Do you have any desire to make a final argument in this matter? Very nice, you may be seated. There is no party intervener. City, same question. Very nice, you may be seated. City Attorney Martin, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The decision of the board should be based only on the evidence provided by sworn witnesses. In addition, the board may make its recommendation to the council after taking into consideration those matters listed in section 15.2.2 of the city's land development regulations. At this time, the planning and zoning board may discuss the application and testimony, any findings of fact upon which the board wishes to base a decision, and vote on the proposed resolution Z2405 following an appropriate motion and second. Should you wish to recommend adoption of the application to the council, you may adopt resolution Z2405, and an appropriate motion would be to adopt it as read by title only. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. At this point, is there any discussion amongst members of the Planning and Zoning Board in reference to the petition as presented by applicant or arguments made by city? All right, very nice. At this time, do we have a motion to approve the petition and pass along the resolution as read into the record by Mr. Martin for consideration of the City Council?
Motion to approve.
All right, we have a motion and a second. That was Ms. Mary and Ms. Wilson on the second. Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays?
Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Woolham?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidy?
Yay. By unanimous vote, let's move on to City Council with recommendations to approve. At this point, Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, you have before you proposed resolution 2024 PZ-LPA SPR 2411, which states a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Board of the City of Lake City, Florida, approving an application for approval of a site plan for multifamily development within the corporate limits of the City of Lake City, Florida, making certain findings of fact in support of the city approving said application, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. This time, I believe all of the people that wish to offer testimony in this matter have been sworn, Mr. Chair, and you may proceed.
Very nice. This time we'll hear from Mr. Thomas for a short summary and overview of the petition in front of us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a petition for site plan review for multifamily development. The parcel in question was rezoned about a year ago, I think, for to go from single family to multifamily. At this time, they're only requesting a total of 6 dwelling units. That'd be 2-story units. You'd have 3 units on top, 3 units on bottom. It is, again, it is in the correct zoning, multifamily zoning district 1, and it is a permitted use under section 4.9.2.3. Staff overview.
All right, thank you. All right, we'll now hear a presentation from the representative for applicant, Ms. Carol Chadwick, acting as agent for Isaac Schlimmer. Please come on down. Name and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
Carol Chadwick, 1208 Southwest Fairfax Glen, Lake City, Florida, 32025.
All right, floor is yours.
Well, we are just proposing 6 units on the property. As a few of you might have been here during the rezoning process, I was not part of that, but I was present at the meeting. Once we submitted the plans to Swanee River, through DEP, we found out that there were a significant amount of wetlands on the property that were not shown on any of the wetland inventory maps or any maps at all. And so we changed direction. There are only going to be 6 dwelling units rather than 12 that they were going to do as duplexes. During the rezoning process, I know a lot of the neighbors were concerned with flooding, and so we kept a very close eye on the stormwater management to make sure that we're following all applicable regulations, making sure that we were not going to cause a burden to any of the neighbors. It has been permitted through DEP for the stormwater management. And besides that, the site meets all the land development regulations for the city of Lake City. And I hope to get your consideration to approve it. And at this point, I would like to move the application into evidence.
Hey, we're getting there. Very nice. Thank you, Ms. Carroll. All right, Ms. Thomas?
Thank you,
Remind
Mr.
You're
Chair.
still under oath at this time. Would you please present the testimony and any case evidence on behalf of city departments and city staff as it relates to this petition?
Sir. So Ms. Chadwick is the agent for the applicant and presented the application. Planning and zoning, it is again located in the correct zoning for this type of application, RMF-1. Has future land use of residential medium, which would allow up to 8 units per acre. The site itself is 1.72 acres, and so that's 6 units is well below the allowable threshold. The property will ultimately be addressed. They'll have addresses for each of the units, individual addresses. There were no liens found, code violations. The building department at this time has no comment. No comment also from our water or sewer departments. And there will be need for gas in the future. Distribution and collections that we'll need to discuss with the applicant when it comes to construction time. And customer service didn't really have enough information obtained at this time of application. There will be tap application utility plans needed to be submitted to apply for water and sewer. And there were no comment from Public Works, Fire, or Police Department. No response as well from FDOT. The site is for Water Management District, applied for a 10-2 self-certification, which basically means under 10 acres, the engineer of record can self-certify that the project is compliant with water management requirements. There was also no comment from the school board, and county had no issues identified as well. Again, here's a aerial just to orient the board to the location of the property. To the north is Bascom Norris, and to the east is, I apologize, I'm still learning all the roads here in Lake City, so I can't read it from here, but the other major thoroughfare there, I believe, is 41, US 41. It does have residential single-family zoning to the east. It's also got some residential mobile home park zoning due east, and then surrounded also by RSF1. Given the wetlands constraints on the property, like I said, without those, it could have been developed at a higher intensity, but with those constraints, it looks like it's going to be limited to the 6 units that are presented before you. With that, staff concludes this presentation. I'd like to read the staff report into the record.
Very nice. Thank you. Other than those choosing to make public comments, either individually or as a group, at this time, do we have anyone that would like to make their presence known as an official party intervener, wishing to offer testimony and cross-examine witnesses in the matter of this petition as presented?
I just have a couple of questions for her, if that's possible.
That would probably be under public comment.
Okay.
Unless you want to get up and cross-examine witnesses and serve as a official party intervener from a legal sense.
No, sir.
Okay, so, but you do have public comment?
Yes.
Okay, we'll get to you in just a moment then. There being no official legal parties intervener, at this time we will open it up for public comment. First, individuals representing themselves. Show of hands who would like to speak either for or against this petition as submitted. All right, we'll have 2. We'll start over here on my left, your right. Please come down and approach.
I'll let the lady go first.
Ma'am?
Appreciate that.
this time, will you raise your right hand and direct your attention to Mr. Martin?
You swear the information you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth? All right, thank you. You may want to pull the microphone. So,
And at this time, can you please give your name with spelling and legal address of record to Mr. Angelo?
Barbara Mizell Perry, Barbara, last name Mizell-Perry, 1099 North Southwest Tuscaloosa Avenue, Lake City, Florida, 32025.
You got all that? All right, floor is yours.
Okay, I have some concern because she says 6 units at this time. Has this been approved for 6 units now and being considered for more units on the small area later?
You can make your comments and questions, and what we'll do is we'll call the proponent back up to address your issues in turn.
Okay, because I'm concerned about the noise, and yes, it's a very wet area, you know, the ditches have water in them all the time. You can come fish in the ditch if you want to in some places, because it's that wet. And then it's so close to have these multiple units, I am concerned about the noise to the people that are around, in the neighborhood as to what they're doing. You know, I saw the plans that they're drawn out, didn't look too bad, but she did say 6 units at this time. So I'm a little concerned about that. But it, like these, I know they're doing a retention pond to help with the flooding, but I just want to make sure it doesn't create a situation for the families right there in the neighborhood. Thank you.
All right, very nice. Sir?
Good evening.
Please raise your right hand and direct your attention to Mr. Martin.
do you swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Nice. Name with spelling and legal address of record for Mr. Angelo.
Al A.L. Nelson, N-E-L-S-O-N, 399 Southwest Tompkins, Thompkins, Loop, L-O-O-P, 32025. I come on behalf of New Day Spring Missionary Baptist Church. I am the pastor there, and it's highlighted somewhat there. And as Ms. Perry said earlier, she only said 6 units at this time, but it could go up to 8 units per acre as per the county, and 12 in that area that we are. So my question is to her, are they looking to expand? If so, how soon? And the land that you are currently trying to purchase and put these dwelling units, will you eventually want to come across the street of Fowler? If you come across the street of Fowler, that means you'll be coming into the land that we have. When I say we, the New Day Springs Church. So I want to know, if you are planning on building more, will you come across the street, which will be Fowler Street, and pursue that land that's there, which will be our land as well. And if you do, when would that happen? And are you planning to build more dwelling units in that area? Because we have 10 plus acres in this area, and we want to make sure that everything is okay for not only for our church, but the surroundings, because we have several members that live on Early Street, back to, well, as I'm standing back to the right, as you're going back to the main highway. So we're trying to, as she said earlier, worry about the flooding and things of that nature for our constituents or members of our congregation that stay on Early Street.
All right, at this time, is there anyone else that would like to speak either for or against, or offer questions for the agent of the proponent prior to her coming up and addressing them?
I have one more thing.
Please approach so you can be heard.
I'm sorry, I should have did this first. I talked to Mr. Angelo earlier, but he told me to go to the property appraiser because they have the wrong address for the church. The address that this letter was sent to was New Day Springs, 1321 West Long Street. And the actual address is 709 Northwest Long Street. So I know I talked to Mr. Angelo about it, but I also want to make it public record that the address that's entered in the system is not correct, because it should be 709 Northwest Long Street, not 1321 West Long Street. I just want to make that for the public.
And Mr. Angelo, that's been forwarded on to 911 addressing to update our records.
Yeah, and what it is when you go on the property appraiser, there's a physical address on there, and then there's a mailing address. And
Gotcha.
so the applicant sees or when they're sending out the certified letters, they see the mailing address that's on there, and that's usually what they send it to. And what he's referring to is the physical address is the 709.
Gotcha. All right, is there anyone else that would like to speak either for or against the petition before I bring the agent for proponent up to address concerns and questions thus far raised? Hearing and seeing none at this time, is there anyone here representing a group of 6 or more individuals that would like to approach and speak on behalf of a group? All right, I'm going to reserve closing public comment this time until agent of proponent has the chance to come up and address concerns raised during the public comment process.
Well, I'd like to address Ms. Barber's comment first. When I said there would be no more units at this time, in my mind, I was referring back to the original plan. There will never be more than 6 units on this property. We've done everything we can to alleviate any flooding issues. But as I don't know if the owner of this property has other interests in the area. If he does, I'm not aware of them at all, and I really can't speak for that. But no, we will never have more than 6 units on this property. We also have proposed a 6-foot tall opaque fence on the west property line to buffer between the apartments and the neighbors to the west.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Carroll. All right, going once, going twice. Is there anyone else that would like to make public comment on this issue at this time? All right, hearing and seeing none, public comment on this petition is now closed. Applicant, please rise. At this time, would you care to cross-examine any of the members of the public or city individuals that offer testimony in this matter this evening?
No.
Very nice, you may be seated. There being no party intervener in this case, representative of city, please rise. Same question? Yes, sir. You may be seated. All right, this time, questions from the Planning and Zoning Board for any of the members of the public or the proponent or the city representatives that have offered testimony or comment this evening on the petition. Starting on my right.
Not this time.
All right. I do have one. I would like to direct this towards the city. You had mentioned during staff analysis and review in regard to taps and sewer, you were still waiting on some documentation before they were 100% satisfied. Are you seeking that any such motion made by this board be contingent upon receipt of those final bits of information that they would need?
No, Mr. Chair, that will come during the building permit phase.
All right, very nice.
Well, go ahead. Question, I'm concerned about possible flooding, and then isn't there a swamp nearby in that area? Is that the same area? And how would we prevent the flooding? I missed that part.
Mr. Chair, there's on-site stormwater retention that is designed to capture and hold any runoff that is generated from the impervious surface created by the development. So there is that. It's also been approved by the Water Management District towards the same purpose. One of the reasons they can't develop any further on the property is because of the issue you just mentioned, and so they've had to design around that.
Ms. Johnson, do you have your pad open? If you go to page 9 of 72 in the package, you'll see in the site plan drawing, not only the wetland delineation line, but also the buffering line and the approximate isobars for the grading of the stormwater retention feature. That'll
That's
be
already been inspected and all that stuff.
proposed to be installed.
Stand by, please. You mentioned sewage. Can we go back over that again real quick?
He indicated we're waiting on information that'll come during the building application process, just to satisfy the last few outstanding questions from sewer department, or not sewer, but what would be customer service department for taps and other utilities.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions from members of the board that can be directed through chair to Mr. Thomas?
So basically, say for instance, like through Hurricane, Debbie, it flooded really bad. Have you all had a chance to examine like the surrounding areas to see how it affected those areas basically, or what have you?
Mr. Chair, other than the application materials submitted, I don't think there's been any further review beyond that.
Okay.
Those considerations would be taken into account by the engineer that's designing the stormwater basin.
Any other questions to be directed through the chair to representative of city and city departments?
Mr. Chair, if I could, I just wanted to remind members of the board that you should refrain from individual conversations back and forth of the dais with each other. That would be a sunshine law violation if it's regarding the substance of the application before you, or any other matter before the board.
But sharing a pad is okay, right?
That was okay, but we should limit that, and if we've got technical issues with Ms. Johnson, we can work with city staff to get those resolved, so she's got the information. We just need to be cautious about it.
Okay. All right, you may be seated. At this time, is there any additional questioning from the Planning and Zoning Board for anyone that has spoken, either as a applicant, a representative of city, or a member of the concerned public?
No.
All right, seeing and hearing none, at this point, applicant, please stand. Do you have any desire to make final arguments in this matter?
No.
Very nice, you may be seated. There being no party intervener in these proceedings, city, same question?
No, sir.
Very nice, you may be seated. Attorney Martin, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The decision of the board should be based only on the evidence presented by sworn witnesses. In addition, the board may make its recommendation to the, actually, this isn't a recommendation to council, this is final action. After taking into consideration those matters listed in 13.11.3 of the city's land development regulations, this time the board may discuss the application, testimony, any findings of fact upon which the board wishes to base a decision, and vote on the proposed resolution following an appropriate motion and second. Should the board wish to adopt or approve the site plan and adopt the accompanying resolution, an appropriate motion would be to adopt resolution number 2024 PZSP 11 as read by title only. Mr. Chair.
Very nice, thank you. Now, at this time, we can open up the floor to discussion amongst members of the board. Is there anything anyone would like to add to this, get off their chest, say to other members? Got one opportunity to do it in the sunshine. You elect to do it into the mic, so it's on the record.
I think my only concern now is just not enough of information to make a decision on it. I think the concern is possible hurricane and flooding and avoiding that from happening, if all possible.
Okay.
So,
That is a low-lying area back there.
yeah.
I mean, it looks like a pretty pretty large water retention feature that's going in. That is a lot of isobars around that. That's gonna be a fairly deep and large retaining body in addition to what the wetland itself will hold. Once you get out past that buffering line, moving to the east side of the parcel where the natural water body is. And given the fact that, just casually looking at it from, page 9 of 72, the stormwater retention feature itself is larger by quite a bit than the structures themselves.
Okay.
But I do understand that part of town, it is soupy.
So
Would it have been a smaller water retention feature? I think I'd be in the same boat you are saying, we may want to look at this again.
Okay.
Anyone else?
So they will be building that area up.
That's what I was gonna say, I mean, there needs to be some filter or something brought in a lot. That whole area is all, I mean, I don't think a lot of people up here, y'all know where it is?
That's why I was asking,
Yeah.
like for hurricane issues, like over there. Is the retention pond bigger than the average retention pond, or how deep is it? Is it?
I mean, did we all forget about what happened over there when the tornado tore it all up and all that? I mean, there was a mess of water and it didn't drain on very, very good. I mean, that was a mess.
The water management district has had the chance to weigh in on this.
I know, but that, yeah, if you'll notice on everything that they put up here, there's never no comment. There's rarely ever do they make a comment, so I mean.
And they need to make a comment.
Exactly.
That's why before I make, any decision, looking at the application, not enough information received, that needs to be filled in.
My concern is that,
One at a time, no.
sorry, look what happened in Dade County. They built it all up, it's all concrete, now they have flooding issues all over the whole county. And I don't wanna see Columbia County turn into that next.
I mean, if you start putting fill dirt in, then what about the rest of the neighbors? I mean, you build up this area, and then what about everybody else out there? I mean, that's it, I know that area, that's a lot of elderly people that live out there, and it's, not like they can modify their situation. I don't know.
Right, that's why I was wondering, with that structure, is it consistent with the already existing structure in the neighborhood as well? Or is you all's structure a little bit more advanced or upgraded, or all of that?
In the review, if you move to page, this would be 10 and 11 of 72, you'll see that the DEP has certified that, quote, the project does not cause adverse water quantity or flooding impacts to receiving waters or adjacent lands, does not cause adverse impact to existing surface water storage and conveyance capabilities, does not cause a violation of state water quality standards, and does not cause an adverse impact to the maintenance of surface or groundwater levels or surface water flows as established pursuant. So it's been looked at, and the state themselves have put their neck on the line saying this is sufficient. I'm not a hydrologist. I'm not about to go against the state's expert testimony and go out on my own limb on this.
So, Mr. Chair, if I may, this is actually a perfect example of what we talked about when we did the workshop on quasi-judicial hearings. You can only base your decision on the information presented tonight. There is no testimony or information presented or out there by the city or by the applicant or any third party that would be, in this case, we're talking about hydrology, so it would probably require someone to be qualified as an expert in water features and hydrology and engineering and so forth to be able to offer the testimony. But there would need to be testimony on the record to counteract what's been presented by the city and the applicant, that what has been presented is sufficient and does meet all of the regulatory requirements and standards of the city, of the water management district, of DEP, et cetera.
And such written testimony from a certified individual, even though he was not here to, swear in and offer such testimony, we can use his written testimony as evidence, correct?
You
Since it
can.
has been moved into the record.
You can, yes.
But doesn't it, I mean, you're asking us to make decisions and a lot of them leave a blank, they don't respond. And I think that we should.
Mr. Chair, if I might address that. As far as whether or not additional fill has to be brought in or whether the design is adequate to retain all the water, that'd be better addressed by the engineer who's present. However, in terms of your question about not getting a response, most of the time, if that is the case, either they've reviewed it and they found it to be sufficient, or if there was an issue, they brought it back to staff's attention, staff's worked with the applicant has remedied that concern, and then when it goes back again.
Yeah, no, I
comment.
understand, but I
So-
mean, a no response is, I mean, that's like, you're asking us to make decisions, but they're not filling in all the blanks. I mean, that's just, I think all the information should be there. I mean, that's just my opinion.
And that's something that we've got a meeting of most of the city staff at least that are involved in providing comment on that sheet later this week, and maybe that's something that can be brought to everyone's attention, that there is value in having some sort of comment, but no comment sometimes is leaving this board at an lurch to know what other people's thoughts are about this moving
Well, what it
forward,
is
so.
is you don't know, did they really even look at it? Did they just miss it and go by? I mean, you don't really know what we don't know. We just don't.
Agreed.
I hear you, and I think that's something we can bring to everybody's attention on Thursday when we have that meeting of all of the development review staff in the city. And moving forward, see if we can get you more information to have at your disposal when you're sitting here to know what their thoughts are. Nevertheless, if you do have additional questions, I mean, it'd be up to the chair, but the engineer is here and could address those. Or in the absence of that, you can move forward to vote, but you are limited to the evidence on the record.
Yes.
So,
Right. So since we are limited to the evidence on the record, which means reason the more why that should be filled in, because if something happens in the future that's, unfavorable,
That's right.
what will we have to look back on? We just look and say, oh, it's blank and everything was okay. Upon what grounds was it okay? You see what I'm saying? So just have them to fill it in. We can make a better decision with the information.
That's right.
Remain seated. Ms. Chadwick, can you approach? Can you please explain the process of what it takes to get this DEP letter that forms page 10 and 11 out of 72 of your package, whereby a certified individual, this Mr. Travis Covington,
Mhm.
has laid out on the record
Yes,
that what I read into the record earlier, this
Right.
project will not have adverse effects on, et cetera. What's the
correct.
process for receiving such certification?
Well, first you start with site plan, you get geotechnical engineering and the location of your pond so that you know the permeability of your soils. And then you design the site plan and then you run the stormwater through, there's either ICPR or ponds software developed specifically for Florida, and they look at a huge number of storm events. And you cannot, you know what your volume is, you can't not exceed your volume, you have to treat the surface water before you release any of it. And you cannot have, let's see, the volume and, the other words, but we're not going to be putting any more water off-site post-development than was leaving the site pre-development. In fact, most cases, it helps to alleviate flooding in the area because you aren't having water run off of the site quickly. We're retaining it or detaining it.
Yes.
So, even though this was permitted through DEP, what that means is the 10-2 self-certification. The project is less than 10 acres in site and has less than 2 acres of impervious surface. And so we go through, the design is the same, whether we're doing a 10-2 self-certification or an individual resource permit through Swanee River Water Management District. The process is the same. We have to show exactly the same results, that we are not going to impact anyone negatively.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the individual who made this certification as part of your package that
Oh,
would then.
Mr. Trafford, he is another engineer that I work with quite frequently. To get that letter really is you submit all of your plans, the geotechnical report, the stormwater management plan to DEP, and then he is certifying that himself as an expert, as a professional engineer, with the knowledge and ability to produce that report. And then you submit that, and then DEP sends you back that letter saying, hey, you are certifying this, you're on the line for that.
And in addition to being a PE, he has specialization in the field of hydrology.
We all do as civil engineers. That's one of our main things that we do. And then not only does DEP approve that, but Swanee River does review every 10-2 self-certification also. So it's not that Swanee River did respond saying that it was a 10-2 self-certification that was submitted. So they're perfectly aware of the plans and they've looked everything over. And they go to the site, they take soil samples, even for a 10-2 self-certification or a verification of exemption. Anytime some project comes to their attention, they go out and they get soil samples and they look over everything.
All right, thank you.
Any additional questions about the certification process of the testimony to which we've been handed? All right, additional questions amongst members of the Planning and Zoning Board?
None.
Additional comments to make sure you get on the record before we call for a vote? All right, at this time, do we have a motion to either approve or disapprove the petition as read into the record by resolution by Mr. Martin?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Ms. Johnson?
Second.
Second from Ms. McCollum. Mr. Angelo, will you please read the yeas and the nays?
Yes. Ms. McCollum?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Mr. Woolham?
Yes.
And Mr. Leidick?
Yay. All right, by unanimous vote, we have approval, and Mr. Martin, this is final approval, this is not a recommendation to go to council?
Correct.
Very nice. Final approval, next step, I guess, is your building permit.
Yes, thank you.
Very nice. All right, at this time, we have no further new business in front of our board this evening. As far as workshop items go, we have a presentation on accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and tiny homes as presented by our very own Brian Thomas. Additionally, we will also have elections for vice chair for the Planning and Zoning Board, so be thinking about who you want to throw under the bus, y'all. Mr. Thomas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a workshop to sort of inform the board about two issues, accessory dwelling units and tiny homes. The city is looking for ways to accommodate affordable housing, and this is a piece of that in terms of how accessory dwelling units and tiny homes can facilitate affordable housing. So, why that did not come over well on the screen. We'll talk about the definitions of what tiny homes and ADUs are and why they're needed, how tenants and homeowners can benefit, and why are smaller units worth investing in, some of the barriers to development of these types of facilities, and how we can encourage affordable small unit development in the hopes of increasing affordable housing stock. And so basically accessory dwelling units, they're kind of just what the name implies. They're also go by granny flats and garden cottages, et cetera. They basically, it's an additional, just typical building code or land development code does not allow you to have a separate unit that has its own kitchen and is self-sufficient essentially from the main house. Accessory dwelling units would be the exception to that. It can be a separate unit like the one on the top there. It can be an attached unit like the one down below. Off to the left over the garage, that's the accessory dwelling unit on that house. But they do operate independently in terms of you could live self-sufficiently there, not have to go into the main house. It can, like I say, it can be freestanding or it can be an attached part of the existing primary residence. Can be either owner or tenant occupied. Oftentimes when a family will build an ADU, they'll actually move into the smaller unit and rent out the larger unit because they no longer need that space. Or it could be actually the parents moving into the smaller unit, the ADU, and letting their children who have a family need the larger space move into it. It's very flexible. And typically you're going to see something in the size range of 400 square feet for like a small one-bedroom ADU apartment to up to maybe 1,100 square feet for a larger unit. Contrast that with tiny homes. I know everybody's kind of heard of the tiny homes. It's been all in the news for the last several years. You know, tiny homes are everywhere. There's all kinds of different types of tiny homes as well. Within the last couple of years, the Florida Building Code has actually been amended to have a definition to define what a tiny home is in terms of the Florida Building Code. And in that code, it goes anywhere from 200 to 400 square feet. 200 square feet is about the smallest size that you can have, that you can meet all of the requirements of the Florida Building Code to be a freestanding dwelling unit. It could be an accessory unit or freestanding. Some of them even come on wheels. That's not really the kind that we're thinking of in terms of providing affordable housing, but just you've heard those out there and want to make sure that we are differentiating between those. And again, it can be site built like a regular house, or it can be modular. Modular is not the same as a manufactured house. Manufactured house would be like your double wide that's brought in on its own frame and then assembled together. A modular home comes in on a truck bed in pieces and then it's assembled, meets the same standards as the Florida Building Code. It has to be inspected by your local building official and inspector for compliance with the Florida Building Code. Manufactured home, the differentiator there is that that's actually inspected in a HUD facility and meets a different standard than the Florida Building Code. So again, a few of the differences: ADUs can be an accessory to primary unit, 400 to 1,100 square feet. And again, too, some of these things are staff suggestions based on our research into the different types of units. Based on recommendations by the board, we could also make modifications for that before we go to the next step, which would be to present to the council. Tiny homes, on the other hand, they can be accessory or freestanding. Again, smaller, 200 to 400 square feet, and potentially at least can be mobile. So why are they needed? A substantial amount of Florida's housing stock is limited to single-family homes. In some areas of the state, North Florida being one of them, that's probably a much higher ratio even than that, because we don't have the multifamily and the attached units like you do in the coastal communities in South Florida. So we don't have as high density. They do allow more people to live on the lots, which help make it more of an affordable option. And if somebody wants to lease them out, or if they want to construct them, but it allows you to expand your housing stock on the same amount of land, essentially. Average number of persons in the household declined, and so again, there is this trend towards smaller living quarters. A lot of people are downsizing severely so they can do more traveling and things like that. It's a popular trend as the baby boomers, and I guess now Gen X is even approach retirement age. Some smaller households, smaller housing in demand. A lot of homes, a high percentage of Florida households are cost burdened. I'm sure everybody on the board has noticed the price of rents going up, the price of housing stock going up, interest rates up. All of that conspires to drive the cost of living up, and the highest impact, the most negative impact, of course, is to people who are at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. And so it makes providing affordable housing that much harder. 3/4 of the low-income renters are cost burdened, and in some areas I'm sure it's even higher than that. And there will be an estimated 3.5 million more people in Florida by 2030. So, certainly our area here in Lake City is, I think, one of the next sort of prime areas for that kind of growth coming into Florida. So, environmental and infill, you get some benefits. It's a smart growth tool for existing, to take better advantage of existing infrastructure, makes greater use of already developed land, and allows persons to live closer, maintain employment centers, or two main employment centers. It allows for more integration of income levels. You don't have the socioeconomic segregation as much as you might otherwise. Creates those benefits for employment, mental health, et cetera. And then workforce housing development, it allows the workforce to live closer to where they actually are employed. And again, it can be incorporated into existing, otherwise built out neighborhoods. So you don't have to have more and more land. You can use the existing land that's developed. Sir?
Just for clarification, for workforce housing development, we're not talking about company towns, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Right. This would just be broadly scattered throughout the community, anywhere that, somebody who had a residential zoned lot that they had a house on it, or potentially they have, for the tiny homes, there's an opportunity to take lots that might actually be too small to develop for a normal size house. You might be able to fit a tiny home or two on that small lot as opposed to a full-sized house.
For example, where a lot of the lots are in some of the company town areas.
Yes. So some of the barriers, the typical Euclidean zoning, and Euclidean zoning, just in a sort of a nutshell, is your grid type patterns where you have strong differentiation between different types of uses. You have a strict delineation between industrial versus residential and that kind of thing, which made a lot of sense when most industry was heavy industrial, but now that industrial is much less heavy, so to speak, you don't have the smokestack industrial like you used to have. Now you have indoor industrial. There's some more compatibility that you can take advantage of over decades past. The staff does believe that ADUs are compatible with single-family homes. A lot of communities across the country now are adopting more lenient regulations to allow for these additional units to be built onto in existing neighborhoods. Again, both to facilitate bringing aging family members into the home, or also used as rental units. Staff does recommend allowing ADUs as a permissible use in single-family districts. There's often owner occupancy restrictions. A lot of jurisdictions do require the homeowners to occupy a primary unit if the ADU is utilized. Staff doesn't really see any reason why you couldn't have, like I said, the owners could actually live in the ADU, the smaller ADU that they no longer need the space, rent out the larger space, or bring family into the primary residence instead. Long-term rental use. Some local governments only allow ADUs for temporary guests or family members. They don't allow them to be used as rentals. That certainly can put a damper on somebody's willingness to spend the amount that it would cost to build an ADU if they know that in the future they can never actually use it for anything other than guests. Again, staff would recommend that you allow ADUs to be rented on the market. As of right versus conditional, a lot of communities will say, well, we'll allow this, but you have to get a special exception for it. To make it easier to develop ADUs, staff would recommend that you make it allowable as of right, as it says there, to make it more attractive to somebody, again, making that investment, that additional investment in their home. And impact fees, of course. ADUs and tiny homes that qualify for affordable housing could actually, by state statute, be exempt from based on the community's desire, could be exempted from those impact fees. Again, to support and encourage affordable housing development in the community. As you can see, there's a lot of barriers, but also solutions. The size, density, and other structural requirements, oftentimes the minimum lot sizes can be an impediment. With the smaller homes, you could, again, as we discussed, you could fit a smaller home maybe on a lot that you couldn't design an actual regular home for. You can exempt the ADUs from normal density calculations. And what that means is you're not counting it as a separate residence, which would then be in violation of your code. It would be considered as part of the principal residence as well, just as an accessory. And then, setbacks, lot line considerations. Parking requirements. A lot of communities have, if you add an ADU, then you automatically have to have an additional off-street or two parking spot for the ADU. In areas that have available on-street parking or community parking, you can have shared parking arrangements that will work out where you don't have to require that extra space, parking space or two. So housing in Lake City, as you're all very aware, most of the housing development in Lake City has been traditionally single family, although you do have some multifamily. Most of it doesn't fall into the affordable housing price range. I can attest to that when I was looking at coming up here. Although I live in Gainesville, I was looking at housing up here. There's very little available, and what is available is fairly expensive. So the greatest need, we believe, in Lake City is for people who the household income is at $35,000 or less. And so whether that's a ownership situation or rental, there's a real need there. We will need to modify the land development regulations and the comprehensive plan to facilitate the development of ADUs and tiny homes. We'd like to allow for permanently placed ADUs with those square footage minimums and maximums. Allow for tiny homes with minimum square footage 200 feet, maximum of 400. And when the ADUs and tiny homes qualify for affordable housing, staff's recommendation would be that we work out some kind of an exemption for impact fees. So in order to promote the use of ADUs and tiny homes for affordable housing purposes, so what we would recommend in that instance would be that they're rented out for long-term only if placed or constructed as affordable housing. And so if it's not going to be added to the affordable housing inventory, then the primary residence would be required to have the homestead exemption. So somebody would have to live in the primary residence in that instance. And then maximum ADU tiny home size not to exceed 40% of the floor area of the primary residence. And one of the primary objections, I think, for some people is that it's going to stand out. It's not going to be compatible with the area around it, the neighborhood around it. And so, we would recommend, especially in historic district, but any neighborhood in general, that whatever the ADU is, it would have to be designed so that it was compatible. It blended in architecturally substantially with the existing residence, so it didn't stand out dramatically. And again, ADUs, they can or cannot be attached to the primary residence. It could be either way, you know, whatever works. A lot of single-family lots wouldn't necessarily facilitate a separate unit, but they might facilitate an addition to the existing unit. And so I think staff thinks it's important that you allow for either or in that instance. Some of the pros of ADUs and tiny homes, you know, it is an opportunity for the owners of the property to earn some extra income. If you look at the income, at the rent limitations for an affordable housing program, it's actually surprising just how high those rents are allowed to be, even under an affordable housing program. And so you wouldn't be necessarily fully constraining somebody to accepting less than, you know, substantially less than market rates. Placing 2 tiny homes on vacant property that would otherwise be too small for a conventional home, you'd be, again, that allows you to take what would be otherwise perpetually vacant land and make it, put it on the tax rolls and make it used viable land. There are opportunities to design actual little tiny home communities. A lot of times, especially when you're looking at infill lots, the reason that they're vacant is usually boils down to something to do with utilities. Whether or not, you know, the cost to extend utilities to that lot is too high. In my previous jurisdiction I worked at, we had 2 lots surrounded by residential development, even had a community center right across the street. But because of the nature of the utilities, the sewer utilities, it was going to be $50,000 to extend sewer to just those 2 lots. And of course, that makes it completely infeasible. It drives up the cost of the lot too high. And so by allowing, we had only 2 units. If we were able to put, say, 6 tiny homes on those lots instead, it spreads the cost out across more units, makes it a little bit more financially feasible than if you're limited to 1 per lot. And by placing or constructing ADUs on tiny homes, the ownership running costs can be less, which benefits, of course, lower income residents. Some of the cons, disruption of daily life. As a landlord, you do have to manage the rental space. This would be particular to an ADU situation. Not everybody's going to find that palatable. They won't see the income potential as worth the potential loss of privacy or just having to deal with a rental unit becoming a landlord. You obviously would lose some yard space regardless of whether it was attached or a separate unit. There can be neighborhood objections. You know, not everybody is going to be in favor of seeing accessory dwelling units or tiny homes in their neighborhood. But staff does believe there's an overall potential benefit, especially in terms of providing a more affordable addition to the housing stock than you might otherwise be able to do without ADUs or tiny homes. They do, on average, have less energy costs, or a little bit more probably energy efficient just because they're so small. It's less to heat and cool. And by allowing them to be placed on existing lots or lots that are too small, you know, you'll be able to increase your housing stock, have more residents. Typically, these types of things happen more towards the urban core, and so then you're also supporting your downtown area with additional residents in the downtown for downtown businesses and such. And so, in closing, just kind of give you a representation of what could happen, or what could be as a program like this. If you had a street that looks like this, and we have a few of those here in Lake City, you imagine that turn it into a tiny home neighborhood, you know, it could look something like this. Provide a lot more housing stock at an affordable rate. And so, with that, conclude the presentation. Thank you for your patience and your attention.
You mentioned during your presentation that obviously it would take quite a bit of heavy lifting, changing what's in the current LDRs. Would this be a process whereby just about all of the individual subsections within section 4 that deal with residential neighborhoods, you know, for example, 4.5, 4.6, 4.9, would we have to rework and retool all of those? Or are you making recommendation that a whole new section get added into the LDRs after whatever the final section is in here that deals exclusively with ADUs and tiny homes?
I envision that we would probably, there would have to be at least some amendment to each of those residential areas, each of those residential sections. Probably the easiest and cleanest way to go about it would be to make them an allowable use by right in each of those sections, which is a fairly minor amendment to each one. But then, as you said, point to a standard in probably section 4.2, the supplemental regulations that would then outline standards for a tiny home neighborhood development or accessory dwelling units and the criteria under which they're allowable and have to be developed. And so most likely, and for the comprehensive plan, we'd have to make some modifications in terms of density and those kind of things.
And then a likewise text amendment in section 10 dealing with historic structures.
You would definitely want to have additional protections for the historic sections of town if you were going to put an ADU or even a tiny home community into them, yes.
I like the idea.
Question for Mr. Martin. For such a large and substantive change involving so many different sections and subsections to the LDR, could that feasibly be done in one text amendment campaign, or is this something that we would be having a marathon of individual sections being updated?
No, I think you would do it and, you know, through this body with one resolution, and then I would envision it going to the council, assuming, well, whether you recommended it or not, it'd still go to council, but I would envision it there being, again, one ordinance on their side to go through and kind of, with a scalpel, add where necessary and delete and modify where necessary in the language. Because I'm sitting here listening, we've talked about tiny home developments, but if you know, back to the lot, it's just kind of a standalone lot that could accommodate 2 tiny homes in some fashion, or a tiny home and an ADU or something like that. But you know, it may be necessary to even go in and if we chose to, I would assume, modify the minimum lot sizes for just in general for a tiny home. I'm guessing or no, but
I think that's probably correct. You know, as far as the floor area ratios, a tiny home obviously is going to accommodate a much smaller lot because it's going to take up so much less of a footprint. And so in respect to that, you might be able to. Also, that would be where some of the density considerations would come in, allowing multiple units on a lot that otherwise would have been restricted to a single residence. So it would entail a fair amount of effort, but again, as part of an overall affordable housing initiative, it's doable. And it could be done on an individual basis where we present these, or it could be part of a larger overhaul of the land development regulations, which we are contemplating in the not too distant future.
And then one final thing before I turn it over to other members of the board. Realistically, with how this will fundamentally change so many of the sections and the subsections in the LDR, realistically, if the pieces fall in place the way you imagine them to, for all of the various strike-throughs and all of the various additions and putting together, you know, the full language of the text amendment that by resolution will get passed on to council. Realistically, what's the time frame before at least a draft could come before this board for consideration, even if we're not at the point of taking action on it, because no doubt there'll be some input that the attorney wants to put in, or possibly some of the other members of the board, when's the earliest we could feasibly have a draft of this to us for consideration?
Mr. Chair, I think just given the fact that we're entering holiday season, that obviously slows things down to some extent. Realistically, to see a close to final or final draft, I would think probably mid-spring.
Okay, so 2 to 3 quarters.
Yes, sir.
And I kind of want to backstep on what I said just a second ago. I think maybe for this body, you may be able to take it in a series of very small bites with resolutions addressing individual components of the land development regulations a little at a time, because what you're doing is merely making recommendations to the council. And then once you have gone through and adopted all of your small recommendations, we roll those into one comprehensive ordinance that could go to council in one big bite. But this body may be able to take it in a series of small bites in a way the council really wouldn't have the ability to do, because if you don't adopt the whole program all at one time, then we've got, on the council side of things as an ordinance, if they don't do that, then we've got these strange provisions that have been adopted in our code with no applicability or without the other pieces necessary to fully implement it. And so that's why I was saying, we would need to do it all at one time, but really that's on the city council side of things. This board could take it in a series of small bites, get to one final resolution, and then recommend everything to the board all at one time, and then we draft one ordinance to get it in front of them.
Yeah, but do we really wanna drag this out too long? This sounds like a great idea, honestly.
It's the law, it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, this sounds good.
I
It
think
sounds really good for.
This will move at the speed of government, I promise.
Oh, no.
Well, and it's one of those things, I mean, if you, Brian can weigh in and if he disagrees, certainly say so. It's been my experience that on something like this, if you try to swallow it all at one time, particularly at a board like this where you're a working board, you're really kind of discussing and going through, you're not adopting kind of the concept.
Right.
Like the council will be doing.
Okay.
And so if you try to do it all at once, you'll probably never really get there.
Okay.
Because it's just so big.
Okay.
But if you can take it in small bites, and it'll be up to staff and the city attorney's office to try to figure out the best and most logical way to slice this. So you take this element of it and we bring it to you and you consider this element of it, and then we take, maybe the two broad elements to break it into are ADU and tiny home. And then within those, there may be several subsets we can bring and talk about, and design standards, maybe something else when you're talking about the historic district and that kind of thing. And that could be a whole conversation one night in and of itself, is just design standards in the historic district, if it's even gonna be allowable in the historic district, and that kind of thing. I don't know if that sounds like a fair estimate to you.
I think the city attorney nailed it on the head. I mean, sort of what we're seeking right now is to introduce you to the concept, to get any feedback you might have. We'll take that feedback and incorporate it back into the materials we present here tonight. Have a similar workshop for the council just to get their input into whether or not they think it's a feasible or desirable project at all. Assuming they come back in the affirmative to that, then the work would start with, as you say, taking it and breaking it into workable pieces and segments that we could then, okay, tonight we're gonna bring this piece of the draft back to you. Next time we bring another piece. Eventually you reach that hole that you're ready to then say, okay, now we can go to the commission, or the council rather, and say, this is what we've worked with the planning and zoning board. This is the sort of the totality of it. And let them then provide their additional input based on the larger piece and get it through like that. It may take, it will take multiple ordinances, because you'll have ordinances for the comprehensive plan amendments then you probably would have a separate ordinance for tiny homes versus ADUs. But presumably, the work would have been done to get it to the final stage fairly cohesively, so that they're seeing more of a finished product than all the individual pieces that will have worked on together.
All right, so for example, moving forward, once council's been briefed on this, and once we're able to, sit down and, get your formalized input, in essence, any given month, we may be looking at, these are the proposed text amendments to section 3 of the LDRs. Following month, these are the proposed changes to section 4. These are the proposed changes to section 10, and kind of like Clay had said, we're gonna eat the whale one bite at a time.
I think that's probably the most logical way to proceed, yes.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to get on the record? Mr. Angelo?
Yeah, I know the board's input as far as kind of getting this on the table and getting it going is great for the community, but I also think, taking it, step by step is very important too, and, to do it right the first time and get everything kind of hashed out and worked out, because then I think long-term, the benefit will be huge for the community.
Additionally, I would recommend, if we are going to get this in front of council just for their introduction, prior to it coming back in front of this board and us having meetings that may last until 10 or 11 o'clock at night, can we do a series of scoping meetings through the city council whereby the public is invited to come in, weigh in ahead of time, so that when this hits them in our agendas, we don't have 100 people in this room all wanting to weigh in with the board, where we're gonna do a lot of the technical work.
Certainly.
Scoping at that council level will greatly make it easier for this volunteer board that doesn't get paid to do this, do our work without being here till 11 p.m.
We're gonna have to talk about that.
That's why I just read it.
Yeah. I have a question.
Go ahead, Ms. Mary.
What would be the difference between the tiny house and people going out getting these sheds and trying to convert them into living? How would you be able to?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Chair, the difference there really is, one is compliant with the Florida Building Code and the other is not. It is not impossible to take a structure that was designed for storage only and non-occupancy and modify it so that it is safe for occupancy. But most people find that actually doing so costs as much as if you had just gone and designed it from the beginning as an occupiable structure. Some industrious shed companies have actually kind of taken that next step and said, okay, these models are actually convertible, and so they've designed them so that if somebody wanted to do that, they could do that. And so there's, again, as the tiny home, I won't say fad, but trend continues, there are more opportunities for those kinds of things out there.
Yeah, 'cause it seems like, it does seem like, a tiny home is just the same thing, so people, if they'll allow their neighbor to have a building put in and not fuss about it, why would they not allow a house? I think it's a great idea. I really do.
It's a great idea.
It is.
It is. I do have one question though, as far as the property owner, will the property taxes go up? And who would bear the burden of the taxes?
Mr. Chair,
The owner assumes all this.
you answered it, yes, sir.
Okay.
Any substantial increase to the value of the property is going to be reflected eventually in the taxes. If it's an ADU that's constructed solely for a family to live in, then it's going to be borne by obviously by the parcel owner or the property owner. If it's a unit design that's built for rental purposes, those costs typically are going to be passed on in the form of rents. And so, but ultimately, it's always the property owner that's ultimately responsible for the increase in taxes.
Is this gonna be done in the county as well as the city?
Mr. Chair, I have no basis for answering that question. I do not know.
We only deal with the city here.
I mean, I was just thinking.
Hopefully, if we come up with something good and they like it, then they'll
They're
jump
gonna
on
copy
board.
off our homework?
Yeah.
Right.
And then you
The
got,
the greatest form of flattery is imitation,
There you
so.
go.
yeah, you got the CRA, area where you have the blight, and you was talking about it, the pattern fitting in, and you got a blighted area, and you put one of these there, that blight got to go, so that means that that's gonna change the dynamics of that area, in the CRA area especially.
We're working on the CRA as well, yes.
Okay.
All right, anything else anyone would like to get on the record before we let our guests go? All right, thank you for your presentation,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Thomas. So to our final order of business, I hope you all have been giving this some thought. We have no vice chair for the 3 boards that constitute the responsibility of those of us sitting at this rostrum right now. Would anyone like to,
I nominate Mr. Wooten.
that didn't take long, all right, we've got a nomination for Mr. Wills. Would anyone else like to throw someone under the bus?
I was second in nomination.
All right, we have a first and a second, do you accept?
I'll accept.
You have an acceptance,
Thank you,
would anyone else like to throw anyone else under the bus as vice chair?
I'll take it. Y'all can hit me with it.
All right, hearing and seeing none, at this time, Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays for Mr. Woolen being appointed or recommended to be appointed by council to the role of vice chair?
Yes.
This does have to go through council, right? Oh, this doesn't?
I don't
It's a
believe so.
final decision at our level.
I think so.
Yes.
I mean, we will verify that, and if it does, it does, but I don't think it would, so.
All right. Let's call the yeas and the nays for Mr. Woolen.
All right, Ms. McCollum,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Sure.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Lyden.
Yes. Okay, congratulations, we have a new vice chair.
Listen, y'all still gonna have to help me. I need it, I'm gonna be coming to y'll.
You'll get to move down to this seat, and she'll move down to that seat, and we'll be right next to each other, so I can help you along.
Okay.
That's why, what was it, 3 meetings ago, when I had to recuse myself or something, I
Yeah.
immediately threw it to her, and she looked like a deer in the headlights. But no, you will take a position at my right. All right, there being no additional business to come before this board, do we have I'm sorry.
Two things.
You're buying dinner.
Not
No.
quite. Not quite. Wanted to make sure everyone understood and knew that our firm hosts an annual ethics training to meet any ethics requirements that the state requires of elected officials. I don't think it applies to this body, but we certainly invite you as well, because you get the same benefit they do. And the penalties for you are the same as an elected council member if you violate the ethics laws. So we invite all of our planning and zoning board, land use board members. The date is December 18th. It is at 4 p.m. It's at our office in Gainesville. I just forwarded the invitation to Robert, and he's going to forward that to you individually tomorrow, so you'll have it, and it'll have the RSVP information on it. If you don't get it, reach out to Robert or reach out to me, and we will make sure you get it, just in case it goes to your spam or something like that. But it starts at 4 p.m., runs till around 9 p.m. That's 5 hours. It takes about 5 hours to meet the 4-hour requirement. We serve dinner during that time, so we'll take a break long enough to serve dinner and that sort of thing. Trust me, it's much better than some of the alternative programs you can get out there for the same substance. We have a lot of engagement. We have all of our elected officials, or at least invited from all of the 8 cities we represent, and then you'll have other leaders from those cities, other members of planning and zoning boards, CRE boards, those kinds of things. And so it's just kind of a hodgepodge, and you'll probably find people you know from other cities, and it's kind of weird how sometimes it breaks out in our office because we have one large room and then we've got several breakout rooms and conference rooms that we pipe it in through closed circuit TV in the building so that people can kind of spread out. You'd think they'd spread out by city, they don't. They spread out by, friendships and business relationships and stuff like that, sometimes they don't even realize that somebody they know is on a board of a adjoining city or something like that. So anyway, kind of funny, but December 18th, 4 p.m.
See if I could just add, having participated at least a couple of times in this training, even if you don't have to have by requirement ethics training, they take an otherwise fairly dry topic and make it enjoyable. There's a lot of interesting examples, both of ethics and you also they do a good job of covering government and sunshine requirements, which is important for this and every board, whether you have to take ethics training or not. I would highly recommend.
So,
I'm coming.
okay, well, I'll mark you down, but do send the email.
I'm on the way.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is going back to what we were talking about earlier with one of the final resolution that we had on the site plan approval. You may have misread my comments. I really wanted to just kind of hear at the end, now that we're out of that hearing, say that it's really heartening to see the engagement of the members of this board and the concern that you've got and the attention that you're paying to those kinds of details. How you process it is something different, and that's kind of what my comments were aimed at, is how you process the information you're receiving. But I've been on boards in other cities, both in the audience and at the dais, where there's no comment, and you kind of wonder sometimes if the board members are even awake, and it just kind of rolls through. And this board is going to be very effective if you continue the kind of engagement that y'all had tonight. I mean, that's really what it takes to make a really good board and set of board members. So I didn't want you to think that I was somehow, discouraging that.
No, you gotta get on us and you gotta help us out, but we're grateful.
Absolutely.
Listen, we're working as a team. I feel like we're all a team on this, I really do. I'm serious, so.
As long as you do all of your team communications in here at the dais.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Yeah, we don't work as a team on our cell phones after hours.
No, but
But I know what you're saying.
we do, we just,
Yeah.
we all, I think we all mix well. It's a good team.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, that was my only comment, those two.
That was it.
And Mr. Angelo will get that out through our official city email channels.
Yes.
So that we can RSVP by the required date. Is there anything else anyone else would like to bring up under workshop item? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion to adjourn planning and zoning?
Motion to adjourn.
Ooh, coming from everywhere. Mr. Angelo, pick one. Do we have a second?
Second.
I believe that was Ms. Johnson on the second.
Yes.
Adjournment by hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right. Planning and zoning stands adjourned. We will continue shortly with Board of Adjustment and Historic Preservation, but I haven't been given the high sign for a privacy break for the restrooms. Can we please cut the audio and the video for And give me a high sign when we have video. Very nice. This time I call to order, Board of Adjustments, City of Lake City. It's the 12th of November. Roll call shall remain the same. Electronically, we had the meeting minutes of our October 8th meeting distributed to all members via our official email channels. I trust that all members of the board have had the opportunity to inspect those meeting minutes. This time, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes as presented electronically? Seeing and hearing none, do we have a motion for their adoption?
Motion to approve. Second. Motion to approve. She seconded.
That's Douglas and then Johnson on the second. All right. By hand vote? Aye. Hands down. Likewise opposed. All right, we have meeting minutes. There being no old business to come before this board and no new business to come before this board, the only remaining item under workshop, at our previous session of the Planning and Zoning Board, there was a nomination and an election to the role of vice chair of the board. I would assume that nomination remains the same for Mr. Woolham to accede to the office of vice chair of the Board of Adjustment as well. Mr. Woolham, do you accept such nomination?
I do.
This time, are there any other nominations to be made for vice chair for the Board of Adjustment? Seeing and hearing none, Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays for Mr. Woolham to become the vice chair of the Board of Adjustments?
Ms. McCullough,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Ms. Rydick.
Yay. All right, congratulations, 2 out of 3. We'll see how you do on the next one. All right, having passed through our regular order of business and having nothing else to discuss, at this time, do we have a motion to adjourn Board of Adjustment?
Motion to adjourn.
Ellen, and I think Ms. Wilson jumped in there. I think she got in on second this time. All right, by hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. This board stands adjourned. Swap the sign real quick.
What?
All right, at this time, I call to order the Historic Preservation Agency, City of Lake City. The date is the 12th of November. Roll call shall remain the same. Meeting minutes of our October 8th meeting were electronically distributed to all members of the board through the city's email system. I trust everyone has had the opportunity to inspect those minutes. At this time, are there any additions, corrections, or deletions to those minutes as presented? Hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion for their adoption? Douglas and Woolham on the second. By hand sign? Hands down, likewise opposed. Very nice. Unanimously, we have meeting minutes. At this time, do we have a Paul Spicer acting as agent for Sophia Parker in attendance? All right, very good. So at this time, we do have old business. At this time, do we have a motion to untable COA 24-21 and bring to the floor that COA for public hearing?
Motion.
Douglas, McCallum, by hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. All right, the item now stands untabled. This time, Clay, do you have anything you'd like to say as we get started on this about communications or rules of the road?
I just want to inquire as to all 3 of the items on the agenda tonight. Have there been any ex parte communications with any members of the board, with anyone regarding these matters?
No, sir.
No.
Thank you. The records reflect that no one on the board indicated ex parte communications. Beyond that, these are still quasi judicial hearings, just a little less formal than the ones we were in earlier. And the decisions of the board should be made on the evidence of record that is presented. Beyond that, I think we can proceed, Mr. Chair.
Very nice, thank you. All right, This time we will hear COA 24-21 submitted by Paul Spicer, agent for Sophia Parker, owner, requesting a certificate of appropriateness in a commercial central business district zoning district as established in section 4.14 of the Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, located within the Lake City Commercial Historic District, as established in section 10.11.2 of Land Development Regulations on property casually described as City of Lake City parcel 11975, located at 428 Northwest Columbia Ave. Mr. Angelo, would you please introduce this petition on behalf of city?
First name swear.
You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, thank you.
And he's got your name and address?
Yep.
Very nice.
All right, so this is COA 24-21, and it is for 428 Northwest Columbia Ave. And they are looking to replace the existing doors. A couple of the doors are gonna move around and then replace a few of the doors, which will upgrade the cosmetics of the building.
All right, very nice. Applicant, please approach. Please raise your right hand and direct your attention to Mr. Martin.
You swear the information you're about to give is truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Name, spelling, and legal address and record for Mr. Angelo, please.
And Paul Spicer, P-A-U-L Spicer, S-P-I-C-E-R, 1880 Southwest County Road, 778 Fort White, 32038.
All right, please let us know what it is you'd like to try to accomplish and present whatever evidence and testimony you feel pertinent in this matter.
Okay, all this is we're replacing 3 exterior doors on an historic house right downtown. As y'all seen, the doors we're replacing is probably 70s eras anyway. And we're replacing them when we presented pictures and everything to Mr. Angelo. What we're doing is for the SHIP program, the Swanee Economic Council, the Live Oak that's paying for the project. So we've improved her home 3 times now with windows, and we'll probably be doing it next year to finish the windows. So this is just her 3 exterior doors. We already have a permit right now for her bathroom to remodel it. So we've been at this for a while with her, bringing up her home to current standards.
All right, is there anything else you'd like to add to the
No,
record?
all the doors will be to code, better than what she had for sure, because, but we tried to match the doors with the best, newer doors that are much better, so that's all we're after.
All right, and you're requesting that your petition and your evidence be moved into the record of these proceedings?
Petition to be moved into the record.
Very nice. You may be seated.
Thank you.
Presentation by city staff. Any other pertinent evidence?
No, that's right, I don't have any other evidence.
Nice. Any third-party interveners? Fantastic. Anyone let's see, I see fewer than 6 of us. Anyone here that would like to speak either for or against petition COA 24-21 as presented by proponent? Hearing and seeing none. Public comment on this petition is now closed. Applicant? Anyone here you want to cross-examine? Angela, same question.
No, sir.
Very nice. Questions of parties by members of the board? I do have one question. Mr. Spicer, you mind coming down? The multiple different doors you provided pictures of,
Yes.
one of them is going to be the example of what they will all be replaced by, correct? Or are they all coming out and it will?
3 doors are coming out. We're putting 2 different doors in, 2 different 6 panels, and I believe one with a window in it to match.
Okay.
So the example of the white 6 panel is generally the design of what the others are gonna conform to.
Exactly, but I believe we're doing one with a door and a window in it, the 6 panel. And I do apologize for the board for missing the last 2 meetings.
It happens.
I didn't know I was supposed to be here.
All right, that's all I have. Does anyone else have anything? All right. Mr. Spicer, you have any desire to make a closing argument?
Nope.
Mr. Angelo, same question?
No, sir.
All right. Any introduction as to the law, Mr. Martin, or do we have it from here?
I think y'all got it under control.
Very nice, thank you. Discussion amongst members of the board. Anyone got anything?
No.
Generally speaking,
It needs it. It's,
I mean, it conforms with the applicable guidelines as far as the Secretary of the Interior standards for historic restoration and rehabilitation go. And it takes multiple exterior facing doors and at least puts them all into the same class of design. And 6 panel, even one with windows would be appropriate for a structure of this age.
The color's not outstanding or out, just crazy, so yeah.
All right, no other discussion by members of the board? All right, in that case, do we have a motion to either approve or disapprove petition COA 24-21 as presented by agent of owner? Was that on the second?
Ms. Johnson? No, okay.
Okay, Ms. Douglas on the second. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Angelo, please call the yeas and the nays.
Ms. McCullough,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Yes.
Mr. Woolham,
Yes. I'm sorry.
and Mr.
I was
Leggett.
trying to be Ms. Johnson for a minute. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yes, don't worry, it'll get even more confusing when you switch seats again, because then your name will be called right before mine as vice chair. Please continue, Mr. Angelo.
Sorry.
And Mr. Leggett.
Yay. All right, unanimously, petition COA 24-21 has been approved. Congratulations, Mr. Spicer. That concludes our old business. Moving to new business. Do we have a John Bianchi here?
No, but I'm acting on his behalf.
Pardon me?
I'm new to this, sorry, I'm acting on his behalf, I guess. I'm the contractor that he wants to do the roof.
Okay,
As far
we
as
have him on our list
Yes.
of, okay, awesome. All right, we can continue. New business, COA 24-25, submitted by John Bianchi, or is that Bianchi?
I think it's Bianchi.
Okay, Bianchi as owner, requesting a certificate of appropriateness in a residential office zoning district as established within section 4.10 of Land Development Regulations, City of Lake City, located within the Lake Isabella National Historic District as established in section 10.11.2 of Land Development Regulations on property described as City of Lake City parcel 12774,000 and casually located at 219 Southeast Hernando Ave. Mr. Angelo, will you please briefly describe this petition to us?
Yes. So this is COA 24-25 for 219 Southeast Hernando Ave. And they are looking to replace the existing metal roof with a new shingle roof. And for this home, you will see a companion application which is on the consent agenda where they are painting the building. So we'll go from that yellow to the kind of brownish color. But the this one is for the shingles.
All right, thank you. Okay. Please raise your right hand, direct your attention towards Mr. Martin.
You swear the testimony you're about to give is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Very nice. Name with spelling and legal address and record for Mr. Angelo.
It is Justin, Justin, Odom, Odom. Address 24328 Northwest 174th Avenue, High Springs, Florida 32643.
And just for the sake of record, you can confirm that he is on the agent
Yes.
authorization form?
I have this paper I brought.
Yeah, that is an agent authorization.
Okay.
form.
Yes.
Okay.
All right, please give us a presentation of what you'd like to try to accomplish this evening.
Mr. Bianchi reached out to us to redo the roof. We gave him multiple scenarios of what we can do, and he would like to take the shingle option. So that's what we're presenting to you guys today, if can or cannot move forward with doing shingles on his roof and removing the existing tin.
Any other testimony or evidence you'd like to add in?
I don't think so. My first time in 2 years having to do this, so no, I don't. High Springs and Gaines is a little bit easier. Submitting, I have no idea what else to say. He just wants to do a shingle roof.
Okay, we may call you up in this.
Sounds good.
And do you move your application and all pertinent testimony into the record?
I would like to move it over to record.
Very nice. Thank you. Mr. Angelo?
So the only other thing I'd really like to add is if you look in the pictures, one of them is of a yellow home, that is the home in question. And that the metal roof that you see on there is what will be replaced. It's in pretty bad shape and so definitely needs to be replaced. They are choosing to go with an architectural shingle, and that graphite gray or kind of a blackish color is what they're choosing to go with.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but a couple of years ago, didn't we already authorize a new roof on this structure?
Yes.
Okay. I guess the property changed hands before the new roof?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, it looks like the hardy siding that's on the current building right now is still unpainted. It's this regular hardy panel color, and it's never been painted from when it was originally approved.
All right, and you move to have your package made
Yes.
part of the permanent record of these proceedings?
Yes.
Very nice. You may be seated. Do we have any third parties that wish to be interveners in this matter? Excellent. Do you have any members of the public here in attendance this evening that would like to speak either for or against, individually or as part of a group, as to petition COA 24-25? Hearing and seeing none, public comment phase of this petition is now closed. Applicant. You can just stay there for a second.
Okay.
Do you have any desire to cross-examine Mr. Angelo?
No, sir.
Mr. Angelo, do you have any desire to cross-examine this fellow?
No, sir.
Very nice. Questions by members of the board? I do have one question, possibly with follow-up. Would the agent please approach the podium? When this came before us a number of years ago, they were wanting to replace the metal similarly with metal. And one of the reasons that they had cited they wanted to do that was that really severe groin between the two cross axes of the house,
Okay.
combined with the very flat nature of that porch addition that's since been closed in on the front. Is architectural shingling going to be the best product for the continued longevity of this structure, given how serious the angles are in that groin and how flat that porch roof is, or would metal be a more appropriate material to ensure the longevity of this structure?
Metal would be more appropriate, but being that of the architectural shingle, we can run high tin peel and stick, as we do at all roofs in the valleys, in the high penetrations, and the flat part has already been redone. We weren't part of the flat roof. That's already been done with new modified bitumen that's on there already. So the flat parts have been done, but the valleys structures can be used high tin peel and stick. Either way, it's good. More appropriate would be metal to match back, but I'm not arguing, just here for what he wants.
Just asking, I just wanted it on the record. And then, obviously, this style of metallic roof
is not original to the age of this particular structure. It was put on at some point during its lifetime. Obviously, you've thoroughly inspected this property.
I have personally, yes, sir.
You've gone over it pretty well. In your estimation, being that this is probably 1960s sheet metal product that they've put on, typically small cottages and bungalows of this nature, this originally would have had either a wood shingle or some sort of a shingled product on it. This would not have been a house originally where metallic sheet product would have gone on. It either would have been a tin shingle or a wood shingle, correct?
Correct.
So,
Do you think he would consider metal shingles, because those have just come out?
Pretty expensive.
Okay,
Kind of
just
with the,
asking.
kind of with the lower row.
That's the best of both worlds.
It is, I agree. It does have a secondary layer underneath, of the shingle underneath, so it is 2 layers.
okay,
Under that
so
middle.
you
yes.
did discover
I did.
evidence this was
Yes.
a previously shingled structure
Correct.
prior to the metal going on.
Correct, it is 2 layers.
Okay, so in essence, this would be the board authorizing a certificate of appropriateness to almost turn the clock back on the structure.
To the original.
Which would be the full faith and credit of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Historic Preservation. While it is not the original, it is closer to the original than what we currently have.
Correct.
Okay. That satisfies. Does anyone else have any questions or comments for the proponent?
Probably need to let him do it before they come back again in a couple of years. Go ahead and get him to do it now.
Well, I was very surprised when I saw this one come to us.
It's been a couple months, so I'm finally here trying to get it through, so.
All right, anything else for the proponent? Or I'm sorry, the agent for proponent. All right, you may be seated. Thank you. Anything else from any of the parties that have spoken, from members of the board? All right, applicant?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Eyes, do you have any desire to make a closing argument?
No, sir.
Very nice, Mr. Angelos, any question?
No, sir.
Very nice. No closing arguments. All right. Any instruction upon the law, Mr. Martin, or are we good?
You're good.
Very nice. This time I'm going to open it up for discussion and action by members of the board. Anyone have anything they want to put on record before we vote on this?
Yes, sir.
Knowing there's shingles underneath that metal, even though they may not be that type of black shingle, this
No,
is
I-
still an improvement.
I know, I think it's gonna make it look better, so let's go.
But better and historically accurate sometimes.
Yes, I agree, okay, I agree.
Closer to the what's there.
There you go. All right, seeing and hearing no additional discussion amongst members of the board, do we have a motion to approve COA 24-25 as submitted by Agent Devoner? Approved. Mr. Woolen?
Second.
And a second from Ms. Wilson. Mr. Angelo, please call the yeas and the nays.
Ms. McCullum,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Woolham,
Yes.
and Mr. Leidy.
Yes. All right, very nice. We have unanimous approval of COA 24-25. Congratulations. Don't go anywhere quite yet because it looks like we have that property coming up under consent agenda. Mr. Angelo, would you please approach the podium and please go over the items on our consent agenda for the benefit of the board?
All right, so this item on the consent agenda is COA 24-24, and it is same for the same property, 219 Southeast Fernando Ave. And they are looking to paint the structure to the color is called creamy hot cocoa. The printout that you see in the packet doesn't show the true color.
It's black and white.
Yeah, and that is the color that they actually chose, and if you look in the historic colors that are in the packet that we put in there too, it's one of the ones that he could find kind of closest to that palette without actually going with, Sherman-Williams. That's it.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I assume the only reason we're hearing this as part of both new business and consent agendas, that one was being contract driven and one was being homeowner driven?
No, the only difference is the paint was, I mean, both of them were submitted by the homeowner, but the contractor's representing him today for the roof. The roof, we felt like needed to go in front of the board as an actual item to be voted on, and because of the nature of the project. The painting, we felt like we could go ahead and approve that, let them go ahead and start the painting on the consent agenda because it was, within the realm of the minor amendments.
Okay. I just so rarely see them on there like that.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Angelo regarding the consent agenda?
No,
Anything amongst members of the board regarding the consent agenda?
no, sir.
All right, do we have a motion to ratify the consent agenda as preliminarily approved by Department of Growth Management?
Motion to approve?
Ratify.
Ratify. Motion to ratify.
Mr. Rowland with a motion to ratify, Ms. Douglas with a second. Mr. Angelo, will you please call the ayes and the nays?
Ms. McCollum,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Mr. Woolham,
Yes.
and Mr. Leidig.
Yay. All right, the consent agenda has been ratified. At this time, we have no additional new business coming before this board. Under our workshop item, we do have an outstanding nomination for vice chair of the Historic Preservation Board. Mr. Woolham, do you still
Yes.
accept nomination to vice chair of this board? Members of the
As
board?
long as I got my lady's support, we're in good shape.
Okay. At this time, are there any other nominations that any other members of the board would like to make for vice chair of the Historic Preservation Board? Hearing and seeing none. At this time, Mr. Angelo, will you please call the yeas and the nays for approval of Mr. Woolham to take the vice chairmanship of the Historic Preservation Board?
Yes. Ms. McCollum,
Yes.
Ms. Wilson,
Yes.
Ms. Douglas,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
and Mr. Leidig.
Yes. Welcome aboard. That's 3 out of 3, Mr. Woolham.
We're doing it together.
There you go.
Got our girls, we're ready to go. Ladies.
Careful, public meeting here. All right, there being
Ladies.
no additional business to come before this board, this time do we have a motion to adjourn Historic Preservation Board?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
That was Ms. Mary, and I believe Ms. Douglas beat everyone in on the second.
We're hungry.
By hand sign. Hands down, likewise opposed. This board stand.
Opposed.
You can sit here. We'll lock you in. This board stands adjourned.
Good night.
Please cut the audio.